Thank you, Reina. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had a good lunch or recharge for the rest of the afternoon. I'm going to take us through the next session where we're going to have a thorough discussion on kind of on the women's place in the tech ecosystem in Japan. And well, I wanted to actually start off with introductions, but Reina already did a very good job. But if there's anything to add, we would like to give you guys some time to maybe add some more about your backgrounds and give self-introductions before we start. So you can start with Miwa-san.
Actually, nothing to add to that.
Let's get started then. Okay, great. Well, okay, so let's start with the capital and fundraising picture. Miwa-san, MPower recently put out a report that has some very striking data points on funding and returns for female-led startups. Can you maybe share some of them to start us off?
Sure. Interestingly, only 2% of the total startup funding goes to female founders. And if you look at the top 100 companies by capital raised, female founders accounted for less than 1%, 0.3% to be exact. And the valuations for early stage startups, female-founded startups, are hugely discounted compared to male-founded startups. To be exact, 0.4 times, so 60% discount compared to male-founded startups. On the other hand, if you look at the exit valuation, market capitalization at IPO to capital raised, female founders' returns are 1.5 times higher than those of male founders. And female founders reach to IPO 30% faster than male founders. So the investment case for female founders, according to these statistics, is clear.
It's really interesting. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing because literally I was on LinkedIn just catching up with some people and figuring out a few things. And this was posted today just to reinforce the statistics. So somebody posted, and by the way, the data and statistics can be sort of unevenly distributed according to which region and which sector and so on and so forth. So take this with a little bit of grain of salt, but women founders now get 1% in some areas, VC dollars, down from 2% last year. So we're trending in the wrong direction in some pockets. And this gentleman, a VC, said, I've helped female founders raise over 500 million. I told them all the same thing. The moment you start saying no, you become fundable, which I think is an interesting way to think about it. So no, I'm not sending a deck before the first meeting. I need 3 minutes to pitch and demo. No, I'm not meeting an associate, bring a partner. No, I'm not opening my whole data room before we talk terms and timeline. And never do what anyone tells you, not me, not an investor, no one. Only do what you think is best for your company and your process. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the, the cultural considerations, but I just wanted to, say that the trend is, people think things are getting better, but unfortunately, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, and Miwa-san, like your data points, what the most striking thing I think is also the fact that obviously there's a funding gap for female-led startups, but it seems like it doesn't impact outcome at all. And in fact, some of the outcomes for females are much better. And I'm curious to hear from the whole panel kind of what your kind of takeaway is, kind of what is happening, why is that happening?
Probably Miku has her first-hand experience raising money from VCs.
Yeah, of course. So if we see this kind of statistic, definitely women are discriminated, right? But and also one of the most difficult things that like in this kind of topic is that, of course, I'm a woman, but like I have never experienced like CEO as a guy. So it is very difficult to compare like Cinnamon AI as a female founder and like possibly like Cinnamon AI with male founder, right? But on my experience, like I have been an entrepreneur for like more than 20 years, and I have raised sometimes it was difficult to raise, and I feel it. Yeah, it is like depending on a theme, and if it is a trend, it is of course like easier to raise. And if I am a right person to do that business, I could raise. But like when I was like doing like some other business, that wasn't a trend. I couldn't raise. So that's my experience. So it is not impossible, even like if you're a female founder, but still there is a like statistically discrimination.
Are you able to share some more details about how much you guys have raised for Cinnamon and from your past experience?
Oh yeah, so we have raised, I guess like $30 million. Yeah.
Any other thoughts from?
Yeah. So we have seen the mismatch. One of the reasons for women to raise less than male founders, there are several. It's not just a single reason, but there are several reasons. One of the reasons cited in the report that we put out is that a mismatch between VC-favored sectors and the sectors where female founders are. So female founders concentrate on in the areas of consumer-facing sectors, retail, FemTech, education, services, D2C brands. On the other hand, VC-favored sectors are AI, semiconductor, manufacturing, infrastructure, energy, and space, and so on, where female founders are rare. So that's one of the reasons. It's not the only reason. That's one of the reasons. While if you look at the same sector and compare male and female founders, still female founders are discounted in terms of valuation, and they raise less within the same sector. Yeah.
It does feel like it's almost kind of like a market mispricing issue that investors can almost take advantage of if they focus on the right female-led startups.
That's the hypothesis we are basing on in our new fund. Yeah.
Okay. Would you like actually, when we spoke before the panel, Miwa-san, you mentioned that MPower. You shared a little bit about MPower with me and their funds, but maybe you can share that with the audience about the fund you guys have.
We just launched a fund called W Power Fund, focusing on female founders, in order to exploit, is the right word or not, exploit those market opportunities, hidden market opportunities, which male VCs overlooked.
I'm going to throw this question out for the whole panel, but do you think women founders need kind of a different type of fundraising environment in Japan? It's not just a money issue, but kind of different processes, different networks to raise money for their startups. Anyone can take that?
Yeah, so I lived in Silicon Valley for 17 years, but I grew up here. So this is something that and I'm an investor with a couple of funds in Silicon Valley. I think that when you say the environment, so first, as we're talking about the various sectors that are more favored for investments being STEM related, and so technology really building the pipeline for women to go into the space sector or women to go into quantum or to AI, all of these things are quite necessary. And in Todai, incredible university, but also still, I think, struggling to make sure that we have more women in these elite universities, and it's not just Japan. So I think starting with the pipeline from the very, very beginning, and the good news is, I don't think you need to have an engineering degree, and that's what's happening with AI right now, is that there's a tremendous opportunity for women that don't have an engineering degree to really apply themselves in the context of business and to build a venture that's going to be commercially viable and can scale. So I think that that's one thing, is the pipeline and getting women acclimated, if not engineering, but at least within the world of technology, advanced technology and deep tech. And it's a tremendous time to do that. And then otherwise, I think that there is a very strong push towards better private-public partnerships, the PPP, which has always been of relevance. I think now, with the geopolitical situation being what it is, countries are really trying to figure out how they develop sovereign capabilities. And so what that means is that governments are figuring out that they need to really put money into the system, specifically around these domains that are advanced technology, in particular space and AI and infrastructure, critical infrastructure, energy. And so within that context is really creating an environment where there's specific funding earmarked for women-founded companies. Because the other thing is that the 2% figure, which has been persistent, unknowingly, because it's not really moved, is that meanwhile, there has been a slight bump in improvement, at least in the United States, around ventures that are co-founded with men. All right, so it's a blended founding team where one of the founders is a woman, classically Anthropic, for example. So I think that to the extent that there can be more of this push towards sole women-founded ventures, as opposed to taking a statistic and saying, oh, look, you know, the women-founded ventures are doing better because it's a blended team, but it's not just a sole woman founder, is also something to perhaps think about here.
Do you want to add to that as a founder?
Yeah,
yourself?
so I totally agree with your opinion that like we should have like more like stronger pipeline even from like university. As yeah, I was a like student. I was a like only the female student in computer science at Todai. So that yeah, so like now like there are not that many deep tech female founders here in Japan, but like it is coming from like that age, right? So. Yeah, and also that is coming from also like cultural gap, because if you see the like Middle Asia, like female students are better at like scientific, like math or like physics, like than boys. So it is more like a cultural thing. In East Asia, the like gap between like boys and girls are even like bigger in math or like physics, like those area. So like culture also makes a like influence about that. So if we want to make difference in that, like we need to like push, like as a like politically, I believe.
Well, I think it only took us about 10 minutes before we mentioned AI, which is the hot topic of every conversation these days. But I also wanted to ask about that in regards to kind of women in the tech ecosystem in Japan. Obviously, AI is now disrupting, everything in our lives. Does that present a chance to kind of reset this ecosystem around kind of underfunding for women, or is there a risk of kind of perpetuating the same issues?
Not only for women, but also like everyone actually, because some of you might know the concept of bootstrap and seedstrapped, as usually like before, if you want to found a company, you need to have an idea and then you need to raise money from like investors and then make a business, right? But like now you have AI, so even if you have an idea, then it is getting much more like easier to develop a product, and also not only developing but also like back office things. So the concept of seedstrapped is just like a one-person startup. So before you need like other founders, and also if you make a bigger business, you need to hire other people. But now it is changing. So if I start a company right now, definitely I will do that. So like I do not need to raise money, right? So for women, especially for women, like like empower is like very important, but also at the same time, it is the the ecosystem is getting changed. Now, like you do not have to raise funds.
Very interesting point.
Yeah, I'll just add that the statistic right here that's also very interesting is that in 2025, $73 billion was raised by women-founded companies, I think globally, and that's double what it was in 2023. But the 40% of that was because of Anthropic and Scale AI, in terms of, right? So there's a little bit of we have to look at the data in that context of how it's parsed. But the good news, I think, is that in the same way that Japan now has its first female prime minister, and there's a famous phrase that you can't beat it in. Yes, thank you. Yes, finance minister too. in the governor of Tokyo, Koike. So yes, so you can't see it, you can't be it if you don't see it, as it were. I think that Ms. Murati, right, who raised a record $2 billion for Thinking Machine Lab, and then you have Dario's sister, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, which is terrible, but the co-founder of Anthropic, and then you have Lisa Guo with Scale AI. I think that when that wealth will trickle down to then be able to seed other ventures that are founded and inspire women. And exactly as you say, this idea of exponential startups. So startups that are 1, 2, 3 person run or solopreneurship, I think is going to be a really powerful movement. But I think your fund is still going to be an incredible fund to exploit. So no, there'll always be that for your fund. So yeah.
Well, yeah, it seems like there's some positive developments around there with AI and with the impact of AI. And you actually bring up a good point when you named out those female leaders, because I did want to talk a little bit about women leadership within the tech ecosystem and how that is also changing. And so, Rika, you literally, I think, wrote a book about women on boards. And what have you learned about the difference between kind of getting women to the room and actually having an impact on decision making and operations once they're there?
And let me get my mic back on. I feel so bad about forgetting Daniela. Okay, there we go. Dario's sister is Daniela. We need to make sure we highlight these names. So one of the interesting, I wrote a book called Dear Chairwoman, and it was picked up by Diamond Publishing here in Japan. So there is actually a Japanese version that has a completely different look on the cover and a different title. So therein lies a little bit the cultural nuances too in terms of aesthetics in general. But I think that there were 3 major themes that caught the attention of people as they were reading and giving me feedback. Number 1 is, as I mentioned, if you don't see it, you can't be it. And so really being able to have role models and to be able to ask for help from those role models, because I think one of the things that women tend to not like to do is to ask for help, because we try to do everything. And in Japan culture in particular, you don't want to inconvenience people, right? You don't want to burden people. So there's a little bit of that. So number 2 was really around mentorship. So it's a bit of the inverse of that, or sponsorship. It's not just having a mentor, but it's having an advocate for you. So classically, you could say that Takaichi-san is benefited from the sponsorship of Abe. Right, so she was really under his wing. And then the third one, which I'll tell the story, it's quite amusing, but a woman was telling me that she joined a board. She was the first woman to join the board. It was a public company board. And one of the things that she realized after about the 2nd or 3rd board meeting was somehow the men, and she was the only woman on the board, the other men seemed to know how each other were going to make decisions. And she realized it was because during the breaks, during the board meeting, like the men would all talk about this in the men's room over the urinals. So the next, when she realized that this was happening, or it would be the cigar night the night before the board meeting, right, when they would all get together and socialize. So she went and stood in front of the men's room on one of the board meetings, and she's like, okay, can I come in? And can we have this conversation about whatever decision? And I'm being a little bit obtuse on this storytelling here, but the point being that a little bit of sort of figuring out where and how decisions are being made are really key for that. So those were just some of the highlights, but there are women that are in the book, Dear Chairwoman, that have that are either deep Japan roots and so are very familiar with that, or they are Japanese American, like Genevieve Shirama. She's Japanese American. She lives in California. She's with the Public Utility Commission Board. And Royanne Doi, some of you know Phyllis Campbell, Alaska Airlines Board. And then you also have an African American, she was a board member of Toyota. So she was on the board of a Japanese company. And so what's really, and it's probably because of my roots just in my network and my connections, but definitely some of the nuances and perhaps this idea that you need to force the issue. So going back to policy of what you're saying is how do we solve for the lack of funding? Bringing governments in to bring policy also has to do with women on boards, where one of the women that I interviewed, Andriana Chedovic, she said, the quotas are absolutely necessary until you get the momentum going in the right direction.
They're great stories. I always relish the opportunity to exchange business cards in the women's room. It's getting better. When I first started out, we very few opportunities to do that. I guess I want to turn more now this question to Miwa and Miku. You guys are both outside directors at publicly traded Japanese companies. I think Japan has made some progress in getting more women on boards, but kind of in these outside director roles. Do you think that is enough, or does it kind of risk just kind of making the optics look nice while not solving for any deeper seated issues? We'd love to hear your take on that.
Sure, yeah. If you look at the Tokyo Prime market, out of approximately 1,600 public companies, only 17 companies have no women on board. So plenty of companies now have women serving on their board. And the average female representation in the boardroom is 18%, has risen to 18%, which is I can say a significant improvement, and the government is pushing to reach 30% by 2030. Having said that, many companies are still struggling to develop female talents in their leadership roles from within. And those are one of the most actively discussed issues in our boardroom. I don't know about Miku's, but they are trying to implement some of the measures to improve that. One is sponsorship program, she mentioned, and the other, a couple of others. Evaluation based on outputs instead of number of hours worked. And in some cases, mandating a percentage of candidates to women for promotion pool. So.
And Miku, would you like to share some from your experience?
Yeah, so I do a outside board director of JGC Group, and also I was a committee member of New Capitalism under Kishida Prime Minister and also Ishiba Prime Minister, and now currently I am the committee member of Takaichi Prime Minister's Japan Growth Strategy Council. So these councils are the very top of the councils in the government, and so the Kishida Prime Minister decided the policy that the half of the committee members should be women. So before in the government, most of the members, like committee members, were of course like men. But because of that, like it is changing very much. Because if the top council could do that, then like other councils, like all of the other councils got changed. Definitely, it changes the percentage of the like woman committee members. So yeah, as Miwa-san said in the like JGC Holding that I do the outside director, we have the same problem that now like we have like two female directors in the board, but still like from like inner members, like especially at top level, we don't have like that much woman pipelines. So of course, like we are trying to raise the pipeline, but still it takes time. But it is changing.
I did want to ask you a bit more about that because you shared with me before the panel. I thought it was really fascinating that you've served, you've advised on Kishida, Ishiba, and now Takaichi's panels. But can you share a little bit more about kind of have there been any changes and differences among the administrations on their kind of view towards women? Because you've been there for all three. Be curious to hear that.
So as I explained, the Kishida-san's the decision to have like half of the female committee members was like it was very big, and then it was continued to Ishiba Prime Minister, and so and also like currently in Takaichi Prime Minister's in the current one, the percentage of female committee members got decreased, but still we have probably like 30 to 40%. So yeah, it is changing. And also this week I had a meeting with Takaichi Prime Minister, but still she decided one of the policy that helps mothers, as in Japan, 80% of house tasks are done by women. So it is a big difference, right? And she made a policy to support, to have a supporter almost for free for women to the house tasks. So it helps us, yeah.
That's great. Great views from right where the action is happening. Thank you. So I wanted to kind of move to our third topic about the pipeline. So, even if you improve funding and leadership and governance structures, you still have to kind of solve the issues of who enters the system and, having role models out there. Where do you think, we just think about the talent pipeline, women going into entrepreneurship or tech, where does the issue start? Is it education? Is it visibility? Is it access to capital? But just, we can maybe talk through that. We'll be curious for your thoughts, and anyone can go.
To have more female founders.
To kind of have a talent pipeline of more female founders coming up, and obviously I think that is an issue that Japan is experiencing.
To use AI.
But where do you think it is?
Yeah, so if you learn how to use AI, it is possible for you to start a company just only by yourself, and you don't have to raise a capital. And you can so many things with AI. So I think learning AI is the most powerful one, I believe.
So, somebody touched on the education, the University of Tokyo issue, and the University of Tokyo, I think women make up only 20% of undergraduate and 10% of a professorship, which in this 21st century,
This is the most prestigious school in Japan.
The little shocking, numbers to see. So that they need to do a better job of doing that. And Tokyo Institute of Science adopted a quasi quota system for their entrance applications, and so I think other top universities should follow that step.
Yeah, and as I was saying earlier about STEM education, getting more women feeling comfortable that that STEM technology or not maths is not out of their reach. But I also think for Japan, it's not a formula, right? And I think the Japanese culture in general is really around following a process and a formula. And that's almost the old world, and now I'm going to age myself, but the old world way of developing software was very waterfall, right? You know what you wanted to do and you work backwards and figure out how you get there. And then with SaaS and downloadable apps and all of that now moving more towards being able to have an agile approach. So anybody that spent time in Silicon Valley, lean, agile principles of developing things is no longer you start here. And it's kind of like how life was, where, okay, you get good grades, you go to Juku, you do great on your shiken, and then you go to a top university, and then you get that job, and you're at that job for 40 years, and then you retire at the age of 65 with the gold watch and maybe a chair role someplace, and that's successful life. Now, I think, like software, your life has become agile, where you can build, measure, learn, and reinvent yourself constantly. And I think that in the United States has been the first to really advance that in Silicon Valley, of course. And I think that idea of being able to not necessarily follow a process or follow the rules and take the risks is something that still hasn't fully embedded itself, I think, here in Japan. And so this, and then you have some of the things around the classical domestic mores also constraining women to really have that freedom to be able to do that, and network is such a big part of this too, of who you know, and building the social tissue, which for women, they have to go back and take care of the kids after work. They can't go out to go to izakaya with coworkers or people that they want to network with. So I think that the mindset shift is also really important alongside the education. And also that, as I mentioned, you don't have to have an engineering degree to be in technology. I'm doing my PhD right now in quantum and AI at the School of Computer Science and Engineering in Europe. I don't have an engineering degree. And yet, through the course of where I've been going, this is now something that I was able to credibly argue of why I would be a doctoral student at that school. So. But Miwa-san, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned about visibility and having more visibility is important the Japanese in general is risk averse, but more male graduates are going into startups and launch their own companies, following the footsteps of Mikitani and Son and Mercari, Yamada-san, and Fujita-san of the world. Female graduates don't have many role models to follow. Maybe Miku or Namba-san, and it's just a few. So.
I did want to ask about that because we've talked a lot about like cultural issues, and kind of it seems like there are some barriers for women getting into entrepreneurship and tech have fallen, but it seems like there are cultural issues at play also with with getting them to take that step. But I'm curious for all of your opinions, but like how much of that change can happen organically because of like a good role model or a success story, and how much of it do you think really needs to be pushed by policy and like very concrete action at a government level? What are your thoughts?
So I think there's a lot of great movement happening. So I just read that Japan, and I came across this with the university that I'm at in Europe, where the Japanese government is funding bringing more PhDs and master's students to Japan. And part of it is an economic matter, right? And your partner, Miwa-san, Kathy Matsui, famously with Womenomics, it's like Japan has got to address the fact that it's a declining population, there's immigration challenges and all these other things. So building alliances and getting exposure. So in the same way of visibility, I also think it's about opening the aperture, because if you don't expand the exposure, then it's really hard to expand the imagination and the motivation and the inspiration to figure out how you're going to realize something, and also to be okay with failing. I think that that's a really big cultural thing here as well, is that you can't fail in Japan. And so when you have the opportunity to work alongside, research alongside, startup alongside people from other countries, and doing trade missions to Silicon Valley or the parts of the world where innovation is thriving, is one of the ways that you can advance that, because now you have peers that you can work with and collaborate with. And Japan's also gotten a lot better about this, but I think that there's still the fact that so much of technology is on English. And so making sure that the English language is also something that is an imperative for how startup founders in the technology world anyway are going to be able to accelerate.
I'm actually in favor of a quota system in politics, corporates, and academics. I mentioned about the top universities need this quota system in politics as well, in order to increase female representation and increase visibility in the first place.
And Miku-san?
The government and everyone is trying to have this balance, but still what I found recently is that I did so much gender discrimination, to be honest. So of course I knew about unconscious bias, and I thought I myself was smarter than other kids when I was little, but still I did that. The reason that I found that is that there were two members in my company. So both were sales members, and one is woman and one is a man, and then both of them didn't achieve the target. And then my feeling was different to both of them. So to a guy, I felt it was oh, it is a shame that he couldn't achieve the target. But to that woman, it was, oh, shoganai. It could happen like that. So my recognition was different. And this means what I learned from this, how to say, the difference understanding is that I had gender discrimination to them and also to myself. So what I thought is that probably I discriminated myself to other, for example, AI or tech, male founders. So even if I didn't that great compared to other tech companies, it's shoganai. It happens like that. So this is very this is coming from a very deep cultural experience as my parents or my teachers in high school, in all the schools, they said girls cannot, girls not that smart as boys. So it's kind of spilling, right? So to understand, so what I would like you to do is you might have this kind of concept. So yeah, imagine this kind of situation and then how your feeling differs.
Thank you for being so open. That was really interesting and sharing so much kind of action-oriented steps for me, for Prime Minister Takaichi to hear about or for everyone to think about. But we are, I think, out of time, but it was so great to have this conversation with you guys and to hear it from so many viewpoints as a founder and also as investors. And so, but I think that's it. So please, a round of applause for our great panelists.